Hello and good afternoon. You're probably wondering if this is a normal unscripted gaming episode, and it is not. This is actually a new type of format that I am trying. It is called Game Analysis and Producer Perspectives, or if you want to be cheeky about it, you can go ahead and shorten it. I'm going to call it GAP, or whatever. I doubt that's going to stick. Anyways, let me introduce myself. For those of you who have been longtime listeners of the podcast, you probably know who I am and where I'm coming from. But for those of you that are relatively new or are listening to this for the first time, hello and welcome. My name is Ray Hazlett. I have a bachelor's degree of science in game design. I have about 10 years making video games in the private sector, working for several multi-million-dollar video game studios with many shipped titles under my belt. I forget the exact number, over 6. And I currently teach video game design and video game production and project management at Bradley University. So this is all to get my quote-unquote credentials out of the way, just to let you know that sometimes I might know what I'm talking about, but do not go ahead and compare me to, say, like a 40-year industry veteran that's been around making video games since the Atari or the NES was around. They're going to know a lot more than me, and by all means, if you want their opinion on something, go take it from them. So, this is something I'm trying new. It's going to get us to get a podcast out about once a week. I'm going to try to get an update about every Monday or Tuesday. And I want to go ahead and talk about in video game industry news. That's the original intent of Unscripted Gaming, as it were, but life gets busy. So, when me and my other co-hosts do meet, that's going to be Josh and Mike. That's normally around once a month. If you haven't noticed, once a month is about our normalized schedule for the past, I want to say 4 years or something like that. But I really do miss the weekly format. And it's not that I have a ton of time to go ahead and do a full weekly format as well, but sometimes I can squeeze in an hour or less. So, normally when my brand new child is taking a nap, that's probably when I'll be able to find time to squeeze in some time if I happen to be home. So let's go ahead and, with all the preamble out of the way, get into some gaming thoughts, some analysis, some news, and a perspective from a producer. First, in this inaugural episode, I want to go ahead and talk about my favorite company to talk about, Microsoft, lately. So Microsoft has been on a bit of a tear for the past, I want to say, 5 years. Maybe we can go ahead and argue and say they've been on a bit of a weird tear since 2013 when the Xbox One was introduced. All I'm talking about today is what I've been talking about in some of my classes that I teach. I do believe Microsoft is exiting the video game industry. Now, I don't have any hard facts about this. I can't prove it to you. All I have is just me reading the tea leaves, and some of the things that they're doing give a large indication of this. Now, I do want to clarify, I do have friends and colleagues that do work for Microsoft affiliated studios. They've bought so many companies in the past 5 years, it's really hard not to have friends that don't in some way work for Microsoft. I have not. I guess I could say not yet at the very least. So let's talk about what is leading me to go down this path. Right, why do you think that Microsoft is leaving not necessarily the video game industry, I think I said that incorrectly, the video game console space? I don't think they're going to be in it very long. I think they're going to pull a Sega and the Xbox One. Maybe they got one more console left in them. But Sega left the console business when the Dreamcast unfortunately failed. I had a Dreamcast, I really liked it. I did not love the controller, but I did like the VMU unit. I thought that was inventive, and I did love a lot of the games that came out with it. But yeah, that controller was a disaster. I don't know if you've ever held a Dreamcast controller. It's like arthritis central. Microsoft recently, they will blame it on the Trump tariffs. By the way, in this podcast, I'm not going to beat around the bush. All of the tariffs are literally Donald J. Trump's fault. If you want to go ahead and say, like, no, it's more complicated than that, it's not. Microsoft is raising the price of their Xbox Series X and their Xbox Series S. Yeah, such a mouthful. By $100 and $80 respectively. That's not a great thing. That's jumping the price from a $500 console to $600 and from a $300 console to $350. The cost of inflation of food, honestly, I'm recording this in May 19th of 2025, so who knows how bad it might get here soon, but the tariff situation has caused prices on almost everything to go up just a little bit, or in some cases, a lot of it, just depending on where you get your items. It is very disappointing to watch a $3 trillion company, and that's trillion with a T, try to go ahead and play pauper and say that due to these trying times, we have to go ahead and press the pricing on to the consumer. Jumping up the price of these video game consoles by, we'll take the Xbox Series X, by a 20% margin is a lot. That's a lot. I don't know where all the components to make an Xbox Series X comes from, but is it worth a 20% price jump? That console has been out since 2020. Are you telling me the components for that console have not gotten cheaper in that time? They should have. Back in my day, and I'm not that old, but we'll go ahead and just pretend, back in my day, the price of consoles went down over time. They didn't go up. We should be seeing a 20% decrease, not increase. So, are more people going to buy a Xbox Series X to that? And this what leads me to say is no, of course not. They are, let's go ahead and get into the very stupid topic of console wars of different companies and different parts of the industry wanting to go ahead and vie for your space underneath your TV. You have the Sony PlayStation 5 currently, the Nintendo Switch, arguably, and the Xbox Series X and or S. Right now, if you combine the sales numbers of all Xbox consoles, the Xbox Series X and S, they've sold about 32 million units worldwide. Now that's a lot. I'm not going to lie to you and say that isn't a bit. That should make Microsoft happy, but of course it doesn't. The reason being is because that's less numbers than their original Xbox that came out in 2001. The Sony PlayStation 5 console units, though, without even including the PS5 Pro, we'll just take the PlayStation 5, has sold, as of right now, 75 million units. That's over 100% increase compared to unit volume. Microsoft is not, quote-unquote, winning any sort of console war as it was when it comes to Sony. They acknowledge that. You can go to their social media pages to look at that. They've said it openly many times. They know they are not selling as many as Sony. And there's kind of an inward joke. The PlayStation 5 doesn't have games. It's kind of true. If you go ahead and count how many console exclusive games are on the Sony PlayStation 5, last time I checked, it was about 12, which isn't a lot. Now that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has come out on Steam, I believe that number dropped to 11. So there's not that many reasons to own a PlayStation 5 unless you want to play next generation video games and you don't want to buy an Xbox. That's really all it is. And it's perfectly fine. I have a PlayStation 5 sitting right next to me. It's to my left, next to my computer monitors. And I will tell you right now, I turn it on ever so often. I don't play it regularly. I think the very last game I played on it was Astrobot, and I played that over the summer. I had a great time. Phenomenal video game. It was either Astrobot or Space Marine 2. Space Marine 2, not a phenomenal video game. It's okay. It's fine. Not the point we're trying to make here. Let's talk about Nintendo's console sales. The Switch has sold 150 million units. That is double what the PlayStation 5 has sold. So if Microsoft is trying to compare themselves to Nintendo, they're in a lose-lose-lose contest. Pretty much everyone that owns a PlayStation 5 also owns a Switch. That's a very safe thing to say. I don't even think what I just said is 100% true, but it's more true than it is not. I wish I could break down those numbers and to see those attach rates, but there are a couple different things that the Switch has going for it that Microsoft is now trying to adjust to. Now, before I get into this, I do want to say that Sony has been raising the prices of their PlayStation 5s just in certain regions. They've raised the price of the PlayStation 5 and of their PlayStation Online connection, whatever that's called, but mostly in the European Union region, and that's just because they don't sell as many PlayStation 5s in the EU region, not compared to North America and Japan. So they're guilty as well of raising prices and not lowering their prices. That said, you could still buy a PlayStation 5 for $500. So if you're in the market for a console that's going to have a lot of support, and you're looking at a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series X, you're probably going to go for one of the cheaper options that's going to be just as powerful. And why would you buy an Xbox Series X at this point? Let's pretend you already have a Switch. Let's pretend you spent $300, $200 if you want a Switch Lite, and you just have it laying around. You're like, you know what, but I want a more powerful game. I want to go ahead and get ready for, I don't know, Grand Theft Auto 6. Insert popular game here. That's multi-platform. And you decide, why should I buy a Microsoft Xbox Series X? I don't think you have a reason right now. And I think Microsoft isn't prepared to give you a reason. I don't think they care. That's my very rudimentary analysis. Why should they care? This is my opinion that they're leaving the console business here soon. Or at least they're not going to support it in as big a way as they've probably been. I'll give you another example. There have been many rumors, and it's barely a rumor, it's almost all but confirmed. Reminder, May 19th, 2025 is when this was reported, is that Microsoft is wanting to enter into the handheld console space. As I said before, the Switch sold 150 million units, and that's been out since 2017. That's not a small number. It is the third best-selling video game console ever, right below the PlayStation 2, and I do believe the Nintendo DS? I'd have to look that up really quick. Nope, I can't find it, so I'm not going to go ahead and try to pretend. Wait, there it is. Yeah, PlayStation 2, 160 million units, and the Nintendo DS, the original hardware, 154 million units. Nintendo Switch, 150 million units. By the way, my source on that is videogamecharts.com, or VG Charts, if you will. That's a lot. That's printing money, basically. Probably everyone that is listening to my voice right now has one or two Nintendo Switches laying around in their home. I think that's extremely safe to say. You clicked on a video game podcast, you probably have a Nintendo Switch, or you're thinking of getting one, or you have a used one, or you have a Switch Lite, or you know several people in your life that have a Nintendo Switch. It's not difficult to find one of those. And they still sell very well. Also, it's very kid-friendly. But more importantly, it's portable. That is something that the other consoles don't have going for them. It's the cheapest option for units, the highest cost Switch right now. The Switch 2 isn't out, shut up. Is the $350 Switch OLED model. Or you can get the original model of the Switch for $300, or you can get the Switch Lite for $200, or you can find used versions of either of the things I just said for sometimes $50 off their MSRP. By all means, if you don't have a Switch yet, you could do worse for video game consoles. It's actually one of my favorite video game consoles of all time. But its portability really makes it. It really does. I can't tell you the different places, countries, plane, train, car rides where I have played my Switch, and it's been fun each and every time. You turn it on and it just works. You don't have to have an internet connection at all, depending on the game that you're trying to play. If you were like wanting to play Tears of the Kingdom, you don't need an internet connection for that. And I have traveled up and down the state that I live in Illinois, on a train without an internet connection playing Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and that just feels good. We can go ahead and get into a debate on whether Tears of the Kingdom actually runs well on the Switch on a different day. That's a completely different topic. Point is, it does work, and it works for $300 plus the cost of the game. Microsoft wants in on that. They want a portable handheld console. They're done fighting for space underneath your TV, in my opinion. I think they're fighting for space in your backpack. And it has been rumored, and there are pictures of it, and maybe on the video version of this podcast, I will post a picture of it. But they are working with ROG, the Asus company, to go ahead and make a portable Xbox. but it's just going to be a reformatted ROG Ally with the big Xbox button in the middle of it somewhere. I have seen what the mock-ups of this look like, and it looks fine, inoffensive. It looks weird also. It has the same design shape as a Xbox One controller, but also, do you want a reformatted ROG Ally for you to be your Xbox replacement? And the answer to that is maybe, but not that many people want a ROG Ally. So let's go over ROG Ally sales numbers. ROG Ally is a portable gaming PC, very, very similar to a Steam Deck. A Steam Deck is a portable gaming PC that's been out for a long time now, I think since 2019. So let's go over prices. We're going to compare apples to apples. ROG Ally, Steam Deck, Switch. Switch, we'll just go with base price, $300 for a Switch. We'll go for the one that actually plugs into your TV. We'll just say the $300 model. ROG Ally, $400. And Steam Deck. Right now, you could buy a Steam Deck for $400. You can get the most expensive version for $650, but that's up to you. Switch runs custom software made by Nintendo. It's meant to play video games, not much else. It's pretty decent at playing video games, I would say. The ROG Ally, we'll go with the $400 version. They have sold maybe, I think it was 500,000 of these handhelds, these ROG Ally PC handhelds worldwide. I found the source for that on just random places on the internet, and no one seems to want to give me a hard number of that. The $500,000 unit worldwide number in the last 2 years seems to be the running number everyone's running with. Now, if you are Asus making the ROG Ally, you probably think that's a pretty impressive number. Yeah. Is it? Is it 500,000 units of you trying to tap into the handheld gaming market? The same handheld gaming market that has 150 million Switches out there? I don't know. I'm not sure about that. Doesn't sound like a screaming success to me. Speaking of screaming success, or their lack of, the Steam Deck. Get a Steam Deck for $400 right now. It runs Linux. It's extremely customizable, and it's extremely customizable as well if you want to run emulators. By the way, the ROG Ally runs a weird version of Windows 11 that I've been told by multiple sources that you can find online barely works, so your mileage will vary. The Steam Deck, though, I've been eyeballing this for a while now, and maybe I'll consider it. Anyways, in the last couple of years since the Steam Deck has been out, it has sold about 4 million units. Maybe a little more. We'll just say 4.5 million units just to go ahead and buff up that number a little bit. Is that a success? Yeah, I guess, depending on who you ask. I could see that as being successful. Is that successful enough to look at Nintendo and say, all right, we're coming after your gaming space? I don't think so. I think when you are attacking that market and you hit not even 10% of their gaming market, it's a little bit more than looking like 3% of their total market share. If you want to compare all handheld gaming space, sure, I guess. The Steam Deck has a lot of things going for it and a lot of things going against it. The things going for it is that if you are into PC gaming, the fact that your entire Steam library can sync up with this thing is really attractive. The thing going against it is $400 is more expensive than the Switch, and you kind of have to know how a computer works really well to typically get it working. I'm not saying you have to be an expert, but it is a lot more difficult than taking the video game cart you purchased from a GameStop, putting it into the system, and boom, you hit the power button and everything works. It's a lot more complicated than that. So it's not for the average consumer, it's for the hyper niche nerd consumer. But those hyper niche nerd consumers are out there and they are throwing some dollars at it. So they've sold a lot more units than the ROG Ally. It's kind of interesting that Microsoft, once again, $3 trillion company, did not want to invest any R&D, or at least none right now, to make their own handheld version of a console. Maybe they don't care to. Sony has actually done the half-step measure. There is the PlayStation Portable. Now, again, Sony is not struggling in the video game market space, they're just not competitive with Nintendo right now. I don't think Microsoft and Sony see themselves as competitive with Nintendo. They want to be also-rans with Nintendo. Nintendo is once again in a comfortable spot, at least for now. We'll see what happens with the Switch 2. The PlayStation Portable, though, is a $200 device that doesn't have a ton of internals. It is just a streaming device. It's a big 7-inch screen, and it needs Wi-Fi to work appropriately. At all, actually. And they've sold a bit of them. They've sold about 2 million units. I don't know who or what the target market for a PlayStation Portable remote device, not an actual PlayStation Portable like I have sitting over on my right side, the PlayStation 2 that's been crammed down into a handheld device. No, the PlayStation Portal, not portable. The Portal, I'm going to keep getting that wrong, there are too many PSP references, is a remote device that remotely logs into your PlayStation 5 to play whatever PlayStation 5 games you have loaded onto your console. This does require your PlayStation 5 to at least be in standby mode, or you'd have an active Sony PlayStation Network subscription. That's a lot, but apparently selling 2 million units in the last couple of years, I think it's been out for a year and a half or something like that, that has determined it to be successful because the console costs something like $100 for the retailer to make, not the retailer, for Sony to make. And if they're selling it for $200, they're apparently making money hand over fist. So it's one of their most successful accessories they've ever sold for the console. Which, good for them. I'm glad they're meeting some demand out there. I don't think it's for me, but I'm glad it's for somebody. Now, is Microsoft going to be able to attack that market? Well, no. The PlayStation Portal device is kind of handcuffed to a PS5. Supposedly, you can get a PlayStation Portal working without owning a PS5. You just have to have a PlayStation Network connection. And supposedly the PlayStation Portal could stream PlayStation 4 games as well, but you do have to have a PlayStation 5 and put the PS4 game into your library by loading it up to the hard drive. Again, it's for somebody. It's definitely not for me. It's a lot more difficult than saying I bought a Switch game out of the store and I'm going to put it into my console. So, again, what is it we've learned today? Well, we've learned that there's a thriving handheld console market, but we're also learning that Microsoft doesn't want to deep dive into it. They're dipping their toes into it, commissioning a whole different company that is pretty much known for making motherboards, amongst other things, into kind of branding one of their newer handhelds to come out with a branded version of Xbox. By the way, every ROG Ally comes, every time you buy one, it comes with a subscription, a 3-month subscription to, I do believe it's Microsoft's Game Pass, Xbox Game Pass, whatever you want to call it. So maybe that's why the partnership is working out very well. I could see that. But do you want to play all of your Xbox Game Pass games specifically on that handheld? Because you could potentially play Xbox Game Pass games on a Steam Deck. Yeah, there's a lot of working around that you need to do, but the same type of clientele that's going to buy a Steam Deck is probably the same type of clientele that's going to mess around and work around that. Maybe the same type of people that buy a ROG Ally are going to mess around and work around that. I don't know. So, ending analysis. Microsoft leaving the console market and dipping their toe into the handheld market. Yeah, most likely. I don't know, mark my words. I don't think Microsoft is going... I think they're going to make one more large video game console. One more. Maybe. But I think they're going to exit out. I actually... You know what? Take that back. due to the Trump tariffs, I'm not even sure if they're going to mess around with that. I think they want people to just buy their games and play their games on whatever device they have. They did last year start a marketing campaign calling everything an Xbox. They called your phone an Xbox, your laptop an Xbox. I think that's cute and also extremely stupid. My laptop is not an Xbox. My phone is not an Xbox. I get what you're doing. You're saying I can play Xbox games everywhere. I don't want to play Xbox games everywhere. Very, very rarely do I use Game Pass. I have used it a couple times to pay, I do believe it was $9 to play one game, and I immediately can't beat that game in under a month, so that I only paid $9. I don't think that's a sustainable business model. That's just me, though. I was able to play, for my example, Outer Worlds, and I was also able to test out both No Man's Sky and Yakuza 0 by just each month on different years, paying $9.99, trying those games, in the case of Outer Worlds, beating that game, and then uninstalling the games and canceling the service, paying a grand total of $30 to try each of those games. Again, that's not sustainable, but maybe the gigantic corporation that is Microsoft is willing to take the hit, but for how long? They've already suffered massive layoffs, just like most other places in the game industry. As a matter of fact, just a couple of weeks ago, they did lay off another 3%, not of their games division, but of their entire company. I think they're, like everyone else, are starting to either feel the pinch, or their corporate overlords are being a little too greedy. It could be both. It can absolutely be both. So are they going to want to stay in the toy space, the video game space, the entertainment space anymore? Or do they want to go ahead and dump more money into computer software and AI tech, of which they're already starting to back away from the AI tech? I don't know. I'd be interested in your thoughts. If you do have any thoughts, please feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments, write an email. I do believe the email is going to be listed on the description notes. And thank you very much for listening. Thanks for your time, and I want you to have a good day. We'll talk to you next week.